All right, Lagos, welcome to A's and Nays. And this is where we get to talk about matters arising on the floor of the National Assembly. And today, we're looking at people living with disability and, of course, women and youth asking for increased they're asking for increased participation. They're asking for inclusivity. They're saying, yes, of course, the Electoral Act as amended has somewhat given them, fair hearing, but they need more. They're asking for more. And I'm going to give you some background before my guest joins in and into the conversation today. Let me just go to that story quickly and give you some background. Now, there is a group that is advocating not just for the issue of inclusivity. Don't forget that there's been an affirmative action going on and on over the years, and more and more women are pushing the bar to be part of the electoral process, including people living with disability. But then they're saying that it's not enough. It's not enough. Yes, we've asked for inclusion. We've been included, but not enough of us are out there. But then, many stakeholders have, relentlessly been fighting for rights of persons with disabilities, and they've argued that their precise number in the country is far from accurate. Yes. As a matter of fact, many and varied fears are being bandied about. For as 2020 estimates between 25 and 27 Nigerians living with one form of disability or the other. Now, however, to the 2011 World Report on Disability, approximately 25 million Nigerians have at least one form of disability, with 3.6 million of these people having significant functional disability. The most common types of these disabilities in Nigeria include visual, hearing, physical, intellectual, and communication impairment. It is, of course, it goes without saying that these forms of impairment are generally met with stigma, with discrimination, as well as barriers that militate against their accessing basic social services, political participation, and even economic activities. According to Nigeria's electoral umpire, INEC, about 85,362 persons living with disability were registered to vote in 2023's election. The cumulative figure for the recent continuous voter registration from June 2021 to July 2022 showed that there are 21,150 persons with albinism, 13,000 persons with physical impairment, and 8,000 with blindness. Those with learning and cognitive disabilities are 1,718. Deafness, you have 6,159. Physical impediments, 13,387. Those with Down syndrome are about 660. Those with little stature, 2,288. Those with spinal cord injury, with others, are at about 27,636. Now, these figures would help us in the conversation that we're about to have. Okay, I'm still waiting for my guest to join in. Once my guest joins in, we will begin this conversation in earnest. My guest is a former speaker, two-time speaker of the Cross River State House of Assembly, and he's going to be helping me to look into this push by people living with disability, women and youth, for more representation in the electoral process. Now, we were part of the elections in itself. We saw what transpired, and these people are saying, well, they were not as represented as they wanted to be. They do not see their level of representation, and they want the National Assembly to look into it. In fact, they're pushing for an amendment, a further amendment of the Electoral Act. As we wait for my guest to join in, I'm going to give you some more information on this issue of inclusivity. And they also talked about, for the women and the young people, they talked about the cost of participating in elections. They're talking about the fact that most political parties do this deliberately to keep the women and young people out of the electoral process, even though, ladies and gentlemen, several political parties have said, look, we've made it easy. We've reduced we've slashed the prices for the tickets in the different parties, for the forms, the nomination forms, especially for women and young people. But then they're still saying they need to look into that. Now, of course, we're still talking about the verdict from the Presidential Election Tribunal. We've seen, the courts and the different tribunals across the country sack some people. We've seen the courts call for supplementary elections. We've seen people who have whose elections have been affirmed or reaffirmed. But then they're saying we need more political inclusion. We need the National Assembly to introduce laws and quotas for women and people living with disability. While my guest is still trying to get on, I think we'll take a quick break and bring my guest. If we're unable to get him via Zoom, we're going to try to bring him on the phone. Stay with us.
This is Hard Facts.
All right, we have gotten our guest now. Honorable, can you hear me?
I can hear you clear.
Perfect. You're live on 92.3 Nigeria, 99.3 Nigeria Info. I beg your pardon. We're being joined by Right Honorable John-Gaul Lebo. He is the former Speaker of the Cross River State House of Assembly. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you were having problems joining us via Zoom.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, let's start by looking at this push for inclusivity here, and asking that the Assembly introduce laws on quotas for women and people living with disability. Now, many people will say that the reason why we had this amendment in the Electoral Act was to include all of these things. How come this is not in any way covering the women, young people, and people living with disability?
Okay, thank you very much. I think the basic problem is that the issue of inclusivity or inclusiveness in a diverse society like Nigeria cannot be dealt with basically by providing a legal framework. The issue is not necessarily down to the appropriateness of an existing law, the insufficiency of the legal framework. I believe that from experience and what we've seen, the issue of inclusivity or inclusiveness of people with disability, or either for young people or for women, either based on ethnic, religious, or any other reason, has to be dealt with first from the background of the policy. There needs to be a policy framework. The policy framework should precede the legal framework. The policy framework is such a framework that creates a national value chain for this issue, for the issue of creating an inclusive framework for women, for youth, for people with disability. Look, without a policy framework, there is no legal framework that can try, because the policy framework is usually the test run. Mm-hmm. It comes when the policy exists for a period of time as test run, then the legal framework firms it up and provides for penalties for it. That is what has been missing in the national conversation. That's number one. Number two is that you also need an institutional framework. An institutional framework here means that beyond having a policy and the legal framework, you need to create specific national or international institutions. If you look at the United Nations Convention on CEDAW, Convention on the Elimination of Disability, of the discriminating against women,
Mm-hmm.
you find that is a small institution across local, state, national, and municipal level across the world. Now, you need to do the same thing for Nigeria. You need to have the ministries beyond Ministry of Women Affairs, beyond Ministry of Youth Affairs. You need to have ministries and agencies, lobby groups, facilitation groups that can handle these issues at both local, at national, and at state level. And so once you have that, then the final thing is that even if you have the framework of policy, legal, and institutional framework, and you do not have a value system, the renewal of your value system, the value system of society that treats people with disabilities as people who are caused and who cannot form part of the workforce or form part of the service economy of any society, a value system that sees women as half human beings who cannot do certain responsibilities, who cannot take certain responsibilities, a value system that sees young people as not being capable of holding certain positions, we nullify whatever we are doing. So I believe that this conversation must be taken holistic, seriously, and then we must go beyond government. The approach, like you said, I'm a lawyer and I've been a legislator. So I know that, when you provide when you pass a law without a policy, without a legal framework, and without renewing the value system of society, you're just playing pranks with humanity. And you may not be able to achieve that. So we need to look at that as holistic strategy to be able to deal with the issue of inclusiveness or inclusivity of women, of youths, of people with disability in a diverse society as Nigeria. We have our ethnic diversity, we have religious, we have ethnic, we have cultural, we have socio-economic, all at that level. So there are so many embargoes already hampering the improvement of inclusivity or inclusiveness in our society for this particular set of people. Don't feel that it's only women who are suffering from this challenge. Don't feel that it's only young people. Even there are men also who are facing those issues on their own. There are women who are doing very well, and there are sectors in Nigeria where men are crying for inclusivity as well because it's dominated by women. You find also in certain areas where youth, you talk about the issue of youth, and what is the definition of youth? In Nigeria, the current Minister of Youth Affairs is not almost 60 years old. So you don't know. So what is our policy?
So Honorable, you're telling me that the problem is not the law, it's the structuring around the law or making it happen, because you see we have these things on paper, but then just as I said in my opening, there are political parties who have said, well, we slashed the prices of our nomination forms for women and young people. We created an atmosphere where even people with living with disability were able to run for certain offices. We saw it in the last election, but then they still do not feel that this is working. And you're saying it's not about government. What exactly do we need to do for these frameworks to actually be put in place? Because it looks like everything seems to rest with just government, and it's not just federal government, but government at all levels.
Yes, I just like I was saying, the first problem is to accept the fact that there's a limit to how much the legal framework of the law can deal with. We need a law, and that law is available. Several laws, CEDAW, the domestication of the CEDAW Convention in Nigeria, and all of that, people living with disability, equal opportunities, and all of those laws are existing almost in all state assemblies, in National Assembly, a lot of that, but it's not enough. It's not enough because in the natural operation of our cultural value system, we have implanted in our heart and in our behavior that certain things is normal for these things to happen. And I'll tell you a typical example. If a political party like my party, the PDP, they actually remove the issue of paying for nomination fees for women and for youth, the state free. So a lot of them picked up. But how many of them can afford to pay for delegates at party primaries? How many youths could afford to pay for delegates at party? Yes, they're giving you the nomination funds. They're giving it to women. They're giving it to people with disabilities. How many of them can afford to pay for it? That is why I'm talking about the issue of our value system, the issue of our policy, and the way we do our things. Then you move on. If you succeed in winning the primary, who told you that the voters will vote for a woman just because she's a woman in the ballot? If she is unable to campaign, if she's unable to reach out, or she's unable to provide us so much infrastructure, which is a competitive campaign among with the other colleagues. Who says that a person with disability will walk up to a full unit and contest elections for Senate and they will vote for him just because of the person with disability? Because the law has said so. The thing is that our policy and our value system in society have not accepted the equal treatment of those things in that manner. So it is two things I would recommend. The first thing is that we must go beyond law and go into our policy and go into our recreating our value system to incorporate, to expand this conversation and include these people in the way we do things. So the role of NGOs will come in.
Yeah.
The role of facilitators will come in. The role of support groups will come in. The role of certain institutions, social institutions like churches will come in. The role of certain organizations, humanitarian organizations will come in. The role of certain international organizations will come in to be able to drive that policy inclusion. There are issues of cultural hindrance as well. We need to approach that one from the cultural point of view and drive that to the end. So at the end of the day, once we have provided that inclusion, giving them the right, they still have a right, they still need to go into the field and compete, unless they are saying that once a person with disability gets a ticket to run election, nobody will contest election.
Automatically, it does mean that the person has won. Yes, but that wouldn't happen.
That won't happen. So that is why I'm saying that our value system and the way the conversation that we have in terms of delivery and performance, the perspective that and the perception that people have about their leaders. Let me tell you, people expect that if they give the ticket hand to run for House of Reps in Calabar, for instance, people expect to see you in the campaign grounds, going around all the 24 or 34 polling units. People expect you to provide campaign materials, provide boxes. So for them, pay for your delegates, pay for your agents to be at the polling unit. You need resources to do that. They need to be available and be mobile.
What about the role that the part that people need to already have known you. You have to have made some contributions before you even started to run for this office, because we see some people just surface to run for an office, but then the people in those communities barely know them. They don't even have an antecedents. You don't even have to have bought land for them or don't send somebody to school, but people in your ward or your local government are supposed to at least have an idea. Does that also play a role in it?
It will play a role.
Aside from the money, because all I hear is money, and stomach infrastructure.
Let me put it this way. There is what we call political capital or social capital in an election.
Yeah.
By and large, in transparent society where you have free, fair election, people win election because of their social capital and their political credit. When you have a developed society, when you don't have, in local communities, people win election because of their cultural capital. Mm-hmm. So people are naturally, culturally very, very important to make. And they've been around, people know them. They are notoriously, positively notorious within the community that people want them. Mm. Sometimes the system doesn't want them, but you can see that those people will go to small parties like Lebo Party and all of that. That's why you can see an Okon rider emerge as a member of the House of Reps. Mm. It doesn't have the money. But because of that cultural ancestral, because of that cultural and social capital, you have that. Anybody with disability, or anybody who is a woman or a young person who wants to be part of the political process must have qualification beyond the credentials of being qualified because we have disability or because society, because we have been sympathy, emotional investment cannot win an election. Mm. You come in because you are on wheelchair, so people will vote for you. You won't walk. You come in because you are a woman, you are a widow, people will vote for you. You won't walk. You come in because you are a young person. In fact, I was the chairman of Nigerian Speakers Forum when we passed the bill not too young to run. Cross River State House of Assembly was among the first few states to pass it. For how many young people have gotten that? Don't forget that my state, for instance, Cross River State, we have produced one of the youngest governors ever. Donald Duke was governor at 37. Senator Leah was minister at 30. They didn't come there with investment in PT, with a hot chunk of emotional investment, teaching me I'm a young person. They went there and they had to hit the ground running. They had to show competence to the people,
Okay.
and they were ready to contest with other aspirants. So beyond the legal framework, beyond the emotional investment, beyond making a case for National Assembly to pass any bill, that election will not be an election that's run unopposed. As long as the
Okay.
election is going to be run with other people who are competent and other people who know how to play the game of, because politics is a game. At the end
Okay.
of the day, no matter how, even if you're a pastor or a prophet, you go to the field, you will lose an election if the people do not feel that for that
So you
particular
need that
office,
approval from
you
the
are,
people.
yes, you are valuable. You
All
are
right.
valuable and you have the capacity.
All right, Honorable, we'll take a quick break now and bring you some and bring some messages. When we return, we'll continue this conversation and see how we can break that cycle of just having laws on paper but not being able to implement it in real time, or getting the people to accept it and run with it. Stay with us. Right, Honorable John-Gaul Lebo is the former Speaker of the Cross River State
Hello,
House of
Mrs.
Assembly.
Martins.
Yes. Oh, Mrs. Johnson, how may I help you?
Junior's body temperature is high and he's complaining about headaches and body aches.
It's still hard facts. 99.3 Nigeria info. I still have on the phone Right Honorable John-Gaul Lebo. He is a former Speaker of the Cross River State House of Assembly. We've been talking about the need for inclusivity. Yes, people asking people living with disability, women and youth, to be more included. They're asking that the National Assembly make laws. In fact, they let me say it, they are asking for affirmative action bills that will create quotas for women, youth and persons living with disability in elective and appointive offices. They're even asking that some of these political parties reduce the amount, the financial the amount of monies, or rather how much the nomination forms for their parties cost, so that they could accommodate. But then our guest has been telling us that it goes beyond those, legislations. It goes to talk about our cultures. It talks about our perspective, how we look at, especially for women. It's not enough to say, well, there's a law that's been passed so we can allow women to run for political parties. But then how many people will vote for women? Are there people who are ready to stand beside women? He talked about the fact that we also needed a legal framework to make these legislations go beyond just being written on the pages of a document. He talked about facilitation groups at all levels, state, federal and local government. Honorable, thank you very much for staying with us on the line. Before I bring Lagos in, because people would like to call in and ask questions, how soon do we as a country, how ready are we to take on ourselves or take off that ideology of, if you want to be a politician, you either have to have money to throw around for stomach infrastructure, buying of delegates. We saw how much money was thrown around in the just concluded elections. Are we ready to go beyond that, or is that ideology or political ideology or perspective, has it come to stay?
Well, I think it's an issue of, it's not a national ideology per se, but it's the nature of our politics, and then the nature of our society and the nature of our economic system. Now, when you hear people talk about political economy, it is because you cannot do politics without understanding the dimension and the metrics of the role that economic and social services play in the political decisions that people make. Now, Nigeria is a third world country. Poverty rate in Nigeria is very high. Employment rate in Nigeria is very high. Politics appears to be the highest source of employment of labor for now. And what you find is that people have made more progress since 1999, less from being entrepreneurs, less from being successful businessmen, less from creating jobs. People have made more progress by being either councillors, chairman of local government, house of assembly members, house of members, senators, and all of that. So every year, you find more Nigerians looking up to politics as the easiest source of employment. If you add the fact that the merit system for political offices is the lowest in our national choice architecture, then you understand. Because the credentials to run for any office, from the councillorship to the presidential election, is not school, sir.
It's very easy.
It's credit in any subject.
Yeah.
So you find that politics is for all Tom, Dick, and Harry, to use that word.
Yeah.
Now, secondly, is that we have what is called a prebendal political system. A prebendal political system is where people vote for their leaders in return for benefits. So when people go for campaign, the people know that this politician that is coming in and has made money, or is going to make money, and we will not see him after he's voted into office. So now that he has come, we'll collect what
Let's take what we can.
We don't see, we don't mind.
So, Honorable, just hold on. I want to bring some people in to just quickly take their thoughts and comments on this issue. 0700 993 993 993. If you want to call, I've been seeing a lot of people trying to call, and we have very little time, so I'll give people 30 seconds each to make their points. 0700 993 993 993. How ready are we to embrace an office where we can have people living with disability, women, people who we think can run for these offices to run, as opposed to the impediments of culture, tradition, and some other things which have come to stay. We want to hear from you. Join the conversation. Let's quickly take this call. Hello. Welcome to Hard Facts. Hello.
Good evening, Miriam.
Good evening. You've got 30 seconds. Go ahead, quick.
Okay, I'm Mrs. Oboli.
Yeah.
I just want to ask, considering the fact that this stomach infrastructure politics is what we have presently in Nigeria, so the honorable that you are speaking with, how do we start changing the narrative? Okay, the issue on ground now is not only in the politicking environment, even schools for children with disabilities, because I have a child with disability, assessing schools for them.
It's tough.
Government schools that they gave to them, all of a sudden they turned it to something else. You can't
Okay.
even assess schools for them.
Mrs. Oboli,
You
your
can't
30 seconds is over. Thank you very much for your thoughts. But let me take another call quickly so that we can allow the Honourable to respond, and then we'll wrap up. We're really, really out of time. 0700 993 993 993. Hello. Good evening. Hello. Oh, dear. Do call us back if you can. 0700 993 993 993. Honourable, would you mind to quickly respond to that in 30 seconds?
I couldn't even hear you well.
So she's asking that now that you've explained to us what the problem is, how do we change, where do we begin to change the narrative?
We need to begin to change the narrative by creating a new value system and ideology for our politics and our social life. Number one is that this money politics is going to be our greatest challenge. If we can deal with money politics, then we can deal with the issue of inclusivity. I give you a typical example. The numbers we have in Nigeria shows that if women were to vote for women, then the president of Nigeria in 1999 would have been a woman. But women don't vote like that. Don't forget that there are political offices that are created specifically for certain people. There's a national woman leader. There's a woman leader in the local government. There's a woman leader in every political party. Most women prefer to hang on to those positions and protect the rights of men than allowing other women to come in.
Honourable, I really wish that we could go on with this conversation, but unfortunately the clock is running and ticking against us. We will have this conversation again. Maybe this time we'll be talking about how to get rid of money politics and all of the issues that get in the way for us. Right Honourable John-Gaul Lebo is a former speaker of the Cross River State House of Assembly. He's also a lawyer. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I wish we had more time to have this conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Well, we'll have to take a break and bring you some information, Lagos. Right after that, of course, we'll be wrapping up and saying our goodbyes on the show. But we've got some information for you.
Lagos, the biggest